Hey jackals, do you want to know what we'll be doing today? I'll show you. So we'll be doing a hologram. Now let's get digital. So the first thing that you need is a texture, ideally of a planet. One way to use a texture is to use a cube texture. I've used this one. You can use any other that you want. How this works is that this texture is wrapped around a cube. If you put it together, but by using math automatically, this can convert to a sphere. So you get a shape like Earth. But in case that this doesn't work, you can use a normal texture, like one of these ones. The one that I've used, and I'll also leave a link to this one, is to go to halfway point and download them here, and I'll show you how to use this texture. So why I'll show you how to use both textures is because if you look at this example, it looks okay at this point, but if I play it, you can see that something's wrong. And if I go inside here, I actually don't know what the issue is because it was working at some point and then just stopped. And I can show you this with render here. This is the original one, which is this composition. And as you can see, it works until the end, but this one is when I made some changes by just applying some glows. And it stops after 5 seconds. So as you can see, 5 seconds would be frame 119, and it works. When I go to 120, the cube map has an issue because it's red and I have no idea why that is. So to fix that, I've simply used a whole map like this one, but this one is a little bit too big. So if it's slow, just scale it down to 1920 by 1080. In this case, the map is also a little bit too big, so you can also scale it down before importing it, and this will also make it easier on your PC. But now let's do everything that you see here from the beginning. So let's make a new fusion composition, open the media pool, right click, new fusion composition, give it a name, also change the duration. So I'll have this planet and at 20 seconds. And the frame rate will be 24 seconds because this is my timeline frame rates, as you can see. So I'll just put this onto the timeline, click on it and go into the fusion page. So first things first, open the media pool, put the media file that you'll be using. You can use a cube map or a normal map. In this case, the map that I've used is this one. You can also use all of the other maps, but in this case I don't want to because I'm just making a hologram. So if you're using the cube map, what you'll want to do, Control space, or some have Shift space to open the select tools, type in cube, and you'll see cube map. As you can see, the icon is of this cube and with the sphere. So select it, connect it, and I'll display it onto right. Nothing much can be seen. So make a sphere, shape 3D, connect this, and so we can see it, we also need to render this out and just make a connection. Now currently the shape 3D is a plane, so you want to change this to a sphere. And just so we have the whole sphere in the view, let's just scale it down, something like that. Now as you see now, we don't actually have a whole sphere, and that's because this map is not being applied correctly. As you can see, the cross is horizontal, and here in the cube map, the layout is set to vertical. So if the cross would be rotated by 90 degrees, then this layout would be correct. So simply change it to horizontal cross. And now we have the whole sphere. Now in case that you don't use the cube texture and you use a texture like this one, simply connect it to the shape 3D node and you'll have the sphere done. And in this case you can rotate it, as you can see. But if you use the cube map, the rotation does not apply and you actually need to have a camera inside the scene so that you can actually rotate it. But we'll add that at a later point. And as always, what I like to do is to add a background and make the background black, and that's what I'll do. So simply like that, add a merge node after the render because this is now a 2D scene and the background is set to black. You can also change the color if you want, maybe have a gradient, and maybe we'll go with deep blue color, something like that. And then you could also add stars to this if you wanted to. The next thing that I want to add is some grid lines to make this look like an actual hologram. So control space, grid, display it on the left. We can't see anything, that's because we need the background node. We now see it. As for the grid, let's see, done 29 and 40. You can play around with these values to how you see fit. Then we don't want to have any major lines. Now for the horizontal and vertical line width, I've set this to 1000. And you can leave the major line width as is because you don't have any major line spacing. You can leave the other settings as is. So now we have this and we have to apply it to a sphere. Now in this case you would want to apply it to this one, but you can't. So I'll make a copy of it and apply it to here. So we have that, and now we'll simply merge these two spheres. Now we have to make some adjustments so that we have visible lines and a little bit visible Earth map. Now in this shape 3D node, the one with the grid lines, I'll adjust the blend mode from software to normal, and I'll be adjusting the subtractive and the alpha gain. Now in this case I've used 0.2 and 0.1. So now we can see the lines, but we also want to see through the sphere. So in this shape 3D node, I'll also adjust the blend mode, set it to normal, but in this case I'll just apply the alpha. So now we can see the lines behind it, and we can also see the landmass behind it. And in this case I've set this all the way down to 0. Now in case that the grid lines do not work, we can also add a bitmap. So we can add it like that, and I'll simply change the alpha channel to red, green or blue in this case. And now when I connect it, we'll see a subtle change. So you can also use a bitmap to get a different result, but this will be more visible once we complete the whole composition. So for now, I'll simply disconnect it. Now if we want to animate this, we could by using the y-axis, and this does work for the grid, but it doesn't work for the sphere. Even if you change these two inputs around, or if you want to animate the actual sphere, as you can see, that does not work. It does work if you have this texture. So you could then simply animate the merge on the y-axis, and both the sphere and the grid lines would move in the y direction. But because I don't have that, and I'll do it anyway, I'll use a camera 3D. I won't connect it here because then the whole composition would move with the camera, but I want the camera to be stationary. So I'll use another merge 3D and put it here, connect it like that. Now the merge 3D is selected, I can see where the camera is and where it's looking. Now I can position the camera manually by using the handles, but I have to actually select the camera. Or I can right click, camera, copy point of view to camera 3D. And how I am looking, now I see the sphere like that. So I can zoom in and do this again. So maybe something like that, and I can also adjust the camera how I want. Maybe I want this kind of view. So now with this merge 3D selected, if I go to the rotation, so now the sphere is spinning but the lines aren't. So let me try connecting the lines here. So I guess the cube has its downside, because in this case you have to make the animation separately for the sphere by using the camera and then also animating the actual lines. So this one would be used to animate the lines. So let's go maybe from frame 0, and this is 0, and then 119, because this is 5 seconds in my case, and this will be 180. And I'll do the same for the camera, so 180 and 0 at the start. So now both the sphere and the lines should be moving together, and they are. And this is because I have this texture map. If I would use this map, then you only need to make one animation. But to make the animation continuous, I'll simply select the Merge 3D, go to the spline, select the Y rotation, click Zoom to Fit, select both points, and click Set Relative. Now this simply continues the animation without any stuttering. And I'll do the same for the Merge 3D, Y position, Zoom to Fit, select both points, and Set Relative. So now the Earth keeps spinning, and so do the lines, or at least they should. So the lines also keep on spinning, it's just maybe not as visible, but we'll fix that. And now we're almost done with the actual base effect. The only thing that we need is, can you guess it? Edge Detect. And we'll have to make some tweaks to make this look nice. So inside the Edge Detect, we don't want to have RGB edges, we want to have them grayscale. And then we'll simply adjust the threshold, smoothness, brightness, and the noise values. So for the threshold, I've chosen about 0.02, smoothness about 0.5, brightness, let's see, I've increased the value to about 4, and then for the noise, I've simply lowered it all the way down to 0, and then change the color to what you want. And all that's left to do is to add some glow effects. Now for the glow, I usually use this one and the soft glow. So let's add soft glow, and let's add this glow. First we'll adjust the soft glow. Now I don't have any values that you can use, because this will depend on how you want the actual end result to look like. Now if you don't want the lines to be as visible, go to this sphere and adjust the alpha gain and the subtractive additive mode. Maybe something like that. Now let's see if anything changes if we connect this bitmap. So I guess we can simply leave the bitmap out of it. And now the last piece of animation, if you want to do it, is, let's see, maybe we can add it here. We'll add the transform node. And what we want to do is simply pop the sphere out or the planet out. So maybe, let's see, we'll adjust the pivot to the bottom point. So now if I use the size, it will pop up from that point. So you can simply use size 0, keyframe that, and maybe the animation will start at frame 10. So I'll keyframe the 0 value again, and then it pops out. Let's say the whole animation stops at frame 20, so this will go to 1. But let's say that we have that pop effect that goes a little bit like woo, and that goes back. So let's say at this point it goes to a little above 1, so maybe 1.2, maybe something like that. Now everywhere that we have movements, so in this case with the transform, you could go to settings and apply motion blur. So it looks like this. You can crank up the quality, but just so you know, when you use motion blur, the PC will get slower and render time will be longer, but it does look nicer. And the same goes with the spinning animation. So in this case we use the Merge 3D and we use this one, but these two nodes don't have the actual motion blur, so you apply the motion blur into Render 3D in the settings. As you can see, but this also then takes a lot longer to render out. Now if this is all that you want from this 3D hologram effect, you're done. You can apply all of the motion blurs, soft glows, glows and other effects, but like you've seen in the beginning, I've also applied some other elements to the whole effect, and if you want to do that, continue watching. So because I'll be adding some other elements, I'll now disable the motion blurs so that my PC doesn't lag. I've added 2 additional elements, and the first one that I'll add are some lines that go over the sphere. So what do we need? Well, we actually need a copy of the sphere. We'll use a merge 3D and we'll use the same camera. So now we have just a sphere and we need a part of the sphere. And I've added a separate merge node. I could have just added the sphere 3D node here, but because I want to use separate soft glows, I'll be doing it like this. So we have the merge. Now we just want a section of this sphere, and to do that, we'll simply use the latitude, and we get a section of the sphere, and we can animate this section, just like that. And if we wanted to, we could also animate it angle-wise. But in this case, I'll only use the latitude. So let's say that the animation will go from the bottom to the top, but we can always change that in the transform, so we can change the position using the rotation. So now if I use the latitude, as you can see, it will move differently. So maybe I'll do it like that. So this will be the starting position. Now the start of the animation, where the sphere pops out, is frame 20. So maybe this will be also the start. And the animation will end in, let's say, a second. So 24 frames in my case, so 44. It will go like this. And what I also want to do is adjust the animation so it's not linear, but maybe ends like this. And now I'll simply hide the media out. So this animation is quick. So let's say that we like the animation. Maybe just adjust how wide it is. You don't want to adjust radius because this will then be different size than the original sphere. So what you could do if you want to make adjustments is to simply make an expression by typing in equals. I'll pin this one. And then you would simply take this plus to this radius. So now we have the first sphere, and I can simply copy this, select this sphere, do equals, or right click and make an expression, and paste that value in. So if we change the value here, and I'll simply show it on the left side. So now when we make the changes here, as you can see, this also changes, and the lines also change with the actual sphere. So now, as I said, I wanted to have different soft glows. So I need render node. I'll simply connect it like that. So now we have only these lines, and let's add the soft glow. And then this will be connected here after it. So now we can go to the shape 3D node, change the color to something closer to what we want. Now when you make the changes to the color, just don't forget that you actually go to the blend mode. You can play around with the blend modes. I've added this to normal, and then adjust the alpha gain and the subtractive additive gain. Then you can add the soft glows and other glow effects. So let's add the glow. Then you can also go to the color scale and change the scales, but this will depend on the color that you've chosen. In this case it's blue, so the blue affects it and the green scale affects it. So maybe something like that. Now currently we only have one line that goes like this, and maybe what I could also do is have it go invisible at the end. Maybe it starts like that and then also ends like that. So that's a bit better. And maybe at the halfway point, which is this, I could maybe increase it just a tiny bit. Maybe something like that. Now what I'll do is add the duplicate node. Duplicate 3D, because this is a shape 3D. I'll make 3 copies. I'll offset the time by minus, let's say, 20. Now I can also play around with the offsets, but the rotation. So let's offset this. So it'll go like that. Now the only thing that is off is the ending. So the ending should be off like that. Cool, so we have that. Now the only thing that we also need is to go to the spline, select all of the nodes. Now in this case I have started the animation at 10 or 20, but I also want to keyframe this at frame 0. So now I have all of the points, and I want the start and the ending latitude. And now I won't use the set relative. While I could, I'll simply use this one, set loop. So now we should have a continuous animation that pauses for 20 frames. So I just went back to the duplicate node and I've set the time offset in this case to -30, because I just think it looks a little bit better than what it did before. So we don't have any overlaps with the lines. So that's the first effect. You can add all kinds of soft glows and glows to this. And the other part is to use a cone under the sphere so that it actually looks like it's turning on. To do that, I'll also use a shape 3D. And the camera will connect to it. Now in this case, if I want to have separate effects like here, I'll use a 3D render again. Otherwise I could connect it in this merge node. So now I can have also a glow effect. And make a new merge node down here. Now currently we have a plane. We want to change this to a cone. Now for the time being, maybe it's best if I do connect it inside maybe this merge. So I can see the cone and the sphere together. So I'll display this on the left and the actual output on the right, like that. So I only need to position it down, and I have to make it smaller. And I also need to decrease the height. How high do we want it? Maybe something like that. So change the radius to something like that. I think the positioning looks okay. Now we need some kind of a texture, and for that I'll be using the fast noise. Now you can adjust the details, contrast and brightness to your liking, and also the scale. You may also want to use some seed and seed rate, so this is animated. And if you get this kind of ugly lines, simply go to the shape 3D node and adjust the base subdivisions. Now the cone doesn't look pleasing, but it does have some texture to it. And before I continue, I can also change the color of the texture here. So let's go with this kind of bluish. So now we have the color, and we can also change it anytime you want. But this cone is a little bit too sharp, so above I'll cut it, and to do that I'll use a B-spline, display it here. Now we won't be animating this B-spline, so it doesn't matter if you're at the beginning or somewhere else on the timeline. I'll first make a cut so I see where the position gets cut. So in this case it gets cut from the top, or actually from the bottom. So if I want to cut it from the top, I'll invert the selection and I'll position it down just like this. Now I can clean it a little bit. and make this actually look like I want it to. So I'll add a bunch of points and make a zigzag kind of pattern. So something like that. And what I want to do is something similar as before here, to have an animation going from the bottom to the top in lines. And to do that, I'll simply make another B-spline. I'll now make another zigzaggy motion going all the way from one side to the next. So something like that. Now, in this case, you don't want to be at the beginning when you make it, because we will animate this polygon. Now the animation will start at 0 and it will stay the same. So 0 again. And then let's say that it will take 1 second, 34 in total, and it will go down like that. What do we have? Nothing at the moment. Now you can do this in two ways, but I guess the easiest one is to use the base effect, which is this cone shape, to be on the left, and then apply this mask in the middle, and then simply change the paint mode from merge to subtract and uncheck invert, and you'll have the animation just like that. Now, because this animation also needs to loop, I'll select the B-spline, go to spline, polyline. So this is the animation. Now select all of the 3 points and click set loop. And this is how the animation will look like. We can also or should apply some soft edge to both the polygons, so we have some softness going on at the top. Now in this example I have a different camera angle, so I could change it. So currently it's like this. Why we have an edge here, it's because now this shape is going through the edge detect. I don't want that. I want it to go here and apply some soft glow to it. And let's see what we have. Now in this case the shape is off, so I can use a transform node to position it down. Now it's glowing too much, so let's just adjust this. So you'll also want to change the blend mode in the shape node to normal and play around with the settings, the alpha and the subtractive ones, to get something that's closer to what you want. Now I may need to do some tweaks, like with the mask. If you use too much of a soft edge, you may need to increase it and adjust it so that you don't get a sharp line around the cone. Also for this animation, so the cone is not always visible, go to the transform, adjust the pivot to the bottom of the edge, then simply scale it down. So in this case, this is the ending animation when this has to be fully visible. Then maybe it needs a quarter of a second to make the animation, so it will be like that. Well, actually it has to come out at this point, so it will also start at frame 10. I would have to tweak the animation a little bit, so this is where it's fully visible, or maybe something like that. I won't use any motion blur, and I'll simply go to the edit page and see how long this takes to render out. And that is it. If you followed along, you should have a similar result to what I have, a hologram of 3D Earth. But you can use this effect to make other hologram planets. And if you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more DaVinci Resolve and video editing content, and hit the bell notification icon so you know when my next video comes out. And leave me a comment down below if you have any questions. I'm Simon, and until next time jackals, keep it digital.